Welcome to the Dental Decoders podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Rogars, and I'm here to help you crack the code on all things dental operations. Each week, we dive into topics to help you overcome roadblocks, streamline operations, and reduce team burnout. Whether you're an owner, a practice manager, or a team member, this podcast is for you. Join us for insightful discussions, engaging interviews, and practical tips. So sit back and relax as we crack the code on all things dental operations together. Well, hello, Decoders. I wanted to just pop on quick and share with you that this episode of Dental Decoders podcast is proudly sponsored by Transformational Dental Coaching. Are you ready to take your practice to the next level? Because for the next 5 episodes, we're excited to partner with Transformational Dental Coaching, founded by the amazing Rebecca Herring. Rebecca brings over 15 years of experience in the dental industry, transforming practices and empowering teams to reach their full potential. Whether it's team building, optimizing operations, reducing costs with virtual assistants, you name it, Rebecca's experience covers it all. Why choose Transformational Dental Coaching? For one, to grow your practice, build a dream team and cut costs with virtual assistants. 2, unlock your team's full potential, enhance teamwork, communication, and patient care. And 3, boost efficiency. Identify and eliminate inefficiencies, allowing your team to focus on exceptional patient experience. We also have an exclusive offer for all of our listeners. Transformational Dental Coaching is offering our audiences a free consultation call. So don't miss the opportunity to elevate your practice and drive success. Check out their website, which will be linked in the show notes, but it is yourtdcoach.com, and schedule your free call today. Hello, Decoders, and welcome to this week's episode of the show. I am eternally excited to have these 2 fantastic women here with us today. I'm joined by my guest co-host, Rebecca, and the legendary Lynn. Lynn, for our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with who you are, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about who you are, what you do, all fun things about you.
Cool. Well, legendary. I like another L. That works for me.
I know, the
That's
alliteration.
3 L's. For those of you that don't know about me, I own Victory Dental Management, and I am all about being a coach with clients versus a consultant, because I think the approach is different. A little insight into me, I'm always going to pick the coaching side of things because I've coached girls basketball for over 3 decades. And I've also been a coach within the business world in many different industries for the same amount of time. So when I talk about coaching, I really am a coach. And when you work with me, you can see the difference between my perspective and the lens that I tend to look at things. Mine is completely different. So that I haven't always been in dentistry. I've worked in transportation logistics, project management, sales. Then I went on to pharmacy, medical, and then dental. So I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I've always wanted to own my own company, and I love bringing out the potential in everybody else. And that is what I'm all about.
I love that. I would love to hear more about specifically having a coaching background, like with your basketball coaching and things like that. I would love to hear more about what skills you learned as a basketball coach that you're able to implement with your clients that kind of sets you apart.
Oh, wow. How long do we have? Well, I think, that's a really interesting question, Brittany, because I think in the dynamic of our industry today, we've had so much turnover, and being able to hire people, it makes me think of, okay, in the beginning of the season, I'm having tryouts with new players. So it's constantly a new season. So I appreciate the stress that the dentists are going through, because it's either all new people or they're bringing on just a few new, players, if you will. So how do you onboard? How do you acclimate them to the current team? If you have a team and not employees, which that's a whole different thing to begin with. But that's a type of thing of being able to look at and go, okay, this is what you have. This is what you want to hire for. Because I'm a huge proponent of hire for character, and then you can teach the skill. On the non-clinical things, obviously, if you're hiring an assistant or a hygienist, that's different. But from an administrative standpoint, I'd rather have somebody of high character that is coachable, that I can teach different things. If they have no dental experience, that does not scare me.
That's awesome. I think Rebecca and I have spoke on that quite a bit about hiring outside of the industry. So I know we agree.
Yes, 100%. And as a mutual coach, not with basketball, but in other realms. I liked Brittany's question because I think it is really valid. When you are used to working as a coach in a sport, it's the same concept of, you're in there with the team, you are watching every player, everyone has something that they need to work on and improve on. And as a coach versus, like you said, a consultant, who I agree with you is two different things and two different approaches. Neither one is better than the other. You want to be boots on the ground. You want to be in there with the team, and you want to help them by doing and showing right along with them. So I love that approach. It's the same reason that I like being a coach and not a consultant. So I appreciate you sharing that perspective for our listeners who may be looking for, your victory management to help them as well.
The other thing I'll add to that is from the perspective as a sports coach is I look at everything from a game plan, right? We need to be concerned not just with how we're looking at things. So again, through the lens of, and it doesn't have to be basketball. I've had so many clients go, well, football was my thing. Awesome. Well, it's an analogy. It's a way of looking at things, because I find that if I can get dentists to understand the non-clinical stuff and give them a different framework to think about their practice, that's what they're looking for, because they're grounded in the clinical. Their happy place is the operatory. We all know that. It's the non-clinical that they need the most help with, because it's what they're the least experienced in. It's their probably least happy thing is leading people, but then also being the business owner and understanding how many different hats they have to wear, that if I can simplify that process for them, it's another way of not only literally putting the game plan together, because every basketball season I have a 3-ring binder that I work with every team. I know my players' strengths and weaknesses. I know what I'm looking for. I know like we were saying before for tryouts, I know what I need to complete my team. So in the dental space, who are you hiring? Why? What skills do they need to have? But then it's also the perspective of, I look at practice time in the office as when you're not seeing patients. Game time is when you are seeing patients. And the difference of the work that you have to do to prepare for both. I'm big into preparing, because that is the only time that a coach has with their players to be able to prepare for anything and everything. And that right there is what we are suffering from in dentistry, because we do not practice to win. We just want to win. You cannot win without preparing to win.
So very true. And I think the concept, like you mentioned, with that, it doesn't have to be basketball. It can be football, whatever, the team or the dentist can relate to, because I think the one thing that dentists really struggle with, like you said, is that business and the leadership side in the practice. You're right. They're grounded in the dentistry side. That's what they went to school for. And so when you can put something in a perspective of an analogy for them, they understand that, right? Okay, doctor, you're the quarterback. Okay. You have the ball and the whole team is around you to help you go down and make the touchdown. Okay, let's go. And when they can understand, okay, this is what this person does for you. And I'm not a football person, so that's why I can't really lay this out for anyone here. Okay. And I know that the quarterback isn't always the one that, of course, makes the touchdown. But when you understand that from a team perspective, right, there isn't one player on the football team. You have an entire team, and you need everybody to knock everybody else out of the way so that whoever's going to score the touchdown can, right? So I really like that you use that analogy. And I think that, if I remember right, you use this in your book, You Can't Coach Quit. Am I remembering that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so I have to share the story with you if I haven't already, is when I first came into dentistry, like forever ago, I think it was like, I don't know, forever. Someone handed me, when I came into my first office, handed me your book. Had no idea who you were, but it was my first manager role. And they said, read the book and use some of the tactics and things that she talks about in the book to help manage our office and be a leader for us. And I remember reading the book and I was like, man, this is great stuff. This is so awesome. But I had no idea who you were. And, we've talked for a long time, but we've personally got to meet face to face at a conference this year. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is the Lynn from this book that I got. You can't coach quit. And I just was so appreciative of the things that I remember. Like, this was years ago that I read this, and the impact that it had on me as a manager and a leader for my practice, and just starting out as a manager, how impactful that was for me. So thank you for writing that and sharing your expertise and your thoughts on how to be a better leader. So for our listeners, great book. It is not big and thick. I think I got through it in 2 days, but it was easy, but it really helped me be a better leader. So thank you for sharing that with the world. And I really enjoyed the book. So
I appreciate that feedback, because it is a very simple read. It's only 56 pages on purpose. I could have written a novel on it, and I didn't want to do that. Again, if you keep everything simple, we have enough things in our lives to try to complicate our lives, right? So why not simplify everything that we possibly can simplify? So I appreciate that, Rebecca. That warms my heart to hear.
Lynn, for our listeners who maybe still have your book on their TBR and haven't got to crack into it yet, can you give us a brief overview of what they would find if they dug into your book and what types of tips you have in there?
Sure. Well, within it, you can find it on Amazon. Is the only place that it's being sold, unless you find me somewhere speaking, and if somebody's giving the book away from that standpoint. But that's one of the things within the book. It talks about it really. How do you look at things from a coaching perspective? There's operational things in there that you have to look at as well, and things that are very specific within our dental industry. But it's more about, if you want to learn how to coach a team, what are the different aspects from a higher level standpoint? What's your viewpoint? How do you need to look at it? Because a lot of people talk about, the word accountability. Well, who doesn't want everybody to be accountable? But how do you create a team to be accountable within one another? And what does that look like from the leader standpoint? Because I am a big proponent that we lead people, we manage tasks. So I'm going to make that delineation for us here. And as a coach, Rebecca, you understand exactly what I'm saying, because tasks are different than leading people. And it's the people part that takes the most time. It always will be. That is where our time is going to be spent. And I got the title of the book because there was a point guard that had she had the potential to play on a D1 team. And literally, she just kept quitting on me. And you could see it written on her face. I could see it on the court. And I'm like, listen, you have the potential to do this. I'm trying. And this was an AAU team. So the goal was to go to college on a scholarship if that's what she wanted to do. She had the potential to do these things, and she just could not get out of her own head. And she would just quit. But not only did she quit on herself, she quit on the team. And that's the part that I'm like, I can't have you as my point guard, because I can't trust you. If you can't handle this during game time, now practice time, she was phenomenal, but game time, if she had any pressure on her, she just folded. And I did everything I could, but I don't know how to coach quit. And when I was writing the book, I'm like, that's a great title. You can't coach quit. So that's how the title came about. But the contents of it is really from a bigger perspective. And I have some coaching tips in there that try to narrow down on each chapter, that summarize it and say, okay, this is what this really means. In very easy to read context, and 56 pages is not going to take you a long time to read.
That's awesome. It's going to go, that your book is going to go right into, I make all my team members, we have a mandatory book club that they don't love as much as I do, but that's going to get put right on the list for that. So I think that's an awesome concept. And I love that you kept it digestible and small. And also, can we just take a second to talk about, you lead people and you manage tasks, because that's the mic drop of the episode. Everybody's always asking, what's the difference between a manager and a leader? And you just casually threw it out there. It was the perfect answer. I love that.
Well, that's the perspective that the leader has to have, because there's so many things that the leader is responsible for. And the more that you can look at it and go, okay, the interaction with my team, that's the most important thing. The task, if you've onboarded correctly and everybody understands their roles and responsibilities, the tasks are the easy part. That's not where you're going to spend your time as the leader. It's going to be, hey, how do I foster more cohesive teamwork within the team? Well, there are a lot of different things you can do, but we've all heard of checklists. How boring is a checklist? And they're only necessary if people don't have attention to detail or if they don't fully understand. So you sprinkle in a little bit of people pleaser with not fully understanding, and you could have a team member that doesn't look like they have attention to detail until, as the leader, you pull that team member aside and, okay, you've had this checklist, you know what to do. These are the things we're looking for. Where's the gap? Help me understand. How can I help you? And when they'll say things like, well, it's just when I have a lot on my mind or I forget to do this, how can I help you so that when you do have a lot on your mind, because that's going to be life, how do we make sure the patients are taken care of? And in all instances, you have to make the patients your priority and the center of everything that you do. Because if you replace it with anything else, that's when the tail's going to wag the dog and bad things can happen from that standpoint. So as long as you keep, as the leader, patient-centric, everything is there for the patients, then everything will fall into place.
I love that. I think we were talking off cam a little bit before we pushed record on making sure that everything starts with your why, which is that's a huge element inside my business. And we lead our teams that way too. We make sure everyone knows our why all the time. I like that your messaging is so consistent. Even when we're off cam to when we're on cam, you have a very strong set of principles that shows through, which I love.
I appreciate that, because the why, I think the why is the secret thing that helps all generations get together. Mm-hmm. I know it's harder when we're hiring people that may not be of our generation that have the same work ethic, but it just takes a little more time to say, this is why we're doing what we're doing. And it doesn't offend the rest of the team members because it's just a reminder. Mm-hmm. And so we all need to be reminded because we all get stuck in ruts. So let's be honest about these things. Let's work around them. Let's do the things we need to do so that we can be the best we can for our patients.
I love that. I think sometimes that why is also becomes very clear sometimes when you bring a new team member on board and they don't understand sometimes, why you do something the way you do it, because obviously they're new to your team. So maybe that's not how they did it in their previous position. And so when you have to explain to them, like, we do this because when we do this part and then we hand it off to the back office, it provides them with this clarity and understanding. So when you have to explain that, it's almost like it's an eye-opening clarity for not only one person, but for like the whole team. And it helps to provide that. It gets rid of the confusion, I guess, mm-hmm. and provides a very clear path that everyone's going to be on. And then it's really easy to support other people. So if someone's out for a day and you know that they do a very specific piece to that clear path, you understand when they're not there where you need to step in and support them too, because it affects the whole team, not just the front, not just the back, and not just, I'm a receptionist or I'm just this. You actually are part of a big circle of a team that you are just as important as the dental assistant or somebody else on that big circle of the team. Everyone has a piece.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I like to do with my clients is, because somebody's going to eventually be out of the office. So whenever I onboard or whenever I clarify roles and responsibilities, it's always who's primary and who's secondary with the task. Because if you're secondary, then if that primary person is out, guess what? That's your job that day. So it sort of puts everything together. If our whole purpose is being there for the patient to make sure they have the best experience possible, and I'm going with that assumption with everything that I do, then we have to teach. Oh yeah, we don't train. We train dogs, we teach people. That's another thing that I've often said, because I think it's a respectful thing. Words have meaning. Train just reminds me of potty training. It always has. And I'm not going to potty train a teammate. I'm going to teach them. I'm going to coach them, but I will not train them. So we can talk about that. You let that lie however you would like that to lie. But that's always been my philosophy. And that's been my philosophy for over 35 years. That's nothing new. That's not a dental thing. That's just a Lynne Leggett thing. But I think that's so important to be able to have that primary and secondary, because you need to prepare for all of those things. Absolutely.
And I think having those redundancies in place, like people think of the word redundancy in a negative way, and sometimes it's a necessary thing, because if you have those redundancies in place, it's going to also help with alleviating some of the burnout that you're seeing in offices everywhere too, which I know is also something that you speak on, is kind of helping people recover from burnout and reduce the occurrences of burnout. So I would love if you could dig into that a little bit, and what does that look like when people are coming to you and they're already at that point of I'm getting to burnout. What does that look like with you?
Well, so I want to start by, there is a difference between being overwhelmed with stress and burnout, because I think a lot of times people use those words interchangeably. And again, let's go back to the words we use have meaning. So it's very important to understand where you are on that spectrum to know what to do. And that's why one of the reasons why I created a custom burnout coaching program that only lasts for 3 months, because it's important for people, if they are suffering from burnout and get out of it, understand your triggers, understand where you are on that spectrum and what to do about it. And then if you're overstressed, let's talk about how do we handle that? Because it used to be a taboo thing. Burnout was there before COVID. It's just after COVID, people just took the magical veil off, right? And now we talk about things that we never talked about before publicly. And I think burnout is one of those things. I'm very big in creating a culture in the office that prevents burnout. So let me explain a little bit about that, because I don't want to take over our time doing that. But culture to me, again, I'm going to simplify things. I think we really overcomplicate that word. Culture at its essence is what is acceptable or unacceptable when it comes to human behavior. That's what will either make us happy or let us use a lot of choice four-letter words, right? I mean, let's be honest. It's somebody's behavior that's making us have a reaction one way or the other. As a team, and this is one of the things I do with all of my clients, if we're going to create a team, part of that is understanding, and the doctor's the head coach, understanding what do I want that for my team. But this is not a dictatorship. This is a exercise that everybody has to have their opinion taken into that, where you create the list. What's an acceptable behavior? What's an unacceptable behavior? And when you go through that, and it doesn't take long, but when you go through that as a team, then you understand, oh my gosh, that's been the problem all along. We've allowed the unacceptable behaviors to take over. And now, because we either are hiring two people, we don't have enough team members, whatever, now what used to be unacceptable has now been not acceptable, but it's been okayed. Because if you don't confront it, then you condone it. That's the biggest problem that's happening with teams also, is what used to be taboo is no longer taboo within the practice. Gossip's not okay. That's going to tear everybody apart. Talking about people behind their back in even more detail, or spreading rumors, all of that stuff is detrimental to a team. It doesn't matter where the team is. On the court, off the court, on the field, off the field, it doesn't matter. That is something that's going to tear cohesion between people down. So burnout comes into that equation a lot of different ways, because if we already treat everybody with the idea that they have the potential for burnout, then it's even more important to break everything down into steps. Does everybody understand their role and responsibility? Is it weighted fairly? Do we have enough people? Can we outsource anything for a short time period so that we can all be okay, get to work, handle our work, and leave on time, so that everybody is mentally sharp? But again, if we're there for our patients, it all comes, it's like a fabric that we're weaving throughout this whole process. Are we there for our patients? Are we strong for our patients? Because what happens with burnout is it's layers. If one day we're this way and you don't get any completion, it's just boom, boom, boom on top of that. So I like to look at everything like the team has the potential for burnout. And especially now with a lot of people doing more with less team members, that is a big, big red flag.
Such a unique, I like the perspective of looking at it from so many different angles, and not just saying, well, here's what happens when you're burnt out. You're looking at it more from like a holistic approach of like pulling culture into that and pulling different team members into that. And I think that's super unique, and I really appreciate that perspective.
So I'm just kind of curious, Lynn, what would you, if someone wanted to like come and hear you speak or wanted to be a part of an audience so they could listen to you speak, what are some opportunities that they would have if they wanted to do that with you?
As far as contracts are written right now, the next time that I speak is going to be at the insurance extravaganza in 2025. But if somebody wants to have more information, I can certainly create a custom call with them and talk to them about whatever they like to talk about. So that is also available.
Okay.
That's great. I will make sure I get all the social media links and everything that you shared with us in the show notes too, so people can connect with you on social media. They can get that call scheduled with you. They can go see you speak at the insurance extravaganza, which, by the way, sounds awesome. I want to go to that.
There was a lot of good information shared, especially for those that do the insurance claims billing, the full revenue cycle management. They had some really great speakers, and that was awesome this year. So
that's always the highlight. Every year I've been working with Christine Taxon and her team to be able to put that together. So it's a lot of fun.
And it is, I will say, the one thing I loved about this year's conference was that there's more and more offices that are doing medical billing.
Yes.
And there was quite a few classes and courses that were offered to learn from Christine Taxon, who is really good at medical billing, to learn how to do that effectively and efficiently in your dental practice. So that was amazing.
Yeah, that's one of the things. I know I don't want to turn it into an infomercial for this, and I'll give you the dates and the link so everybody can register. With my code, you can register for it, which is victory. Imagine that. No, I'm not highly competitive at all. No, which is not bad. Being competitive, we'll put a pin in that for a minute for being competitive. I want to get back to that. But one of the things about being at the extravaganza, and I see in my general practices, is because a lot of people will say, well, I don't bill medically. I said, well, let's talk about that. Because if you've got a CBCT scanner and you've got other things and you're doing implants and you're doing these things, why are you giving that away? You're only giving it away because you don't know how to handle the claim. So learn how to handle the claim. I always view insurance as a method of payment. So if that is everybody's philosophy, which I think should be everybody's philosophy, then let's make treatment as available as possible for our patients. We code for what we do. I'm not trying to say anything different than that, but give our patients every opportunity to be able to take advantage of stuff that they already have. So, but I'll make sure, Rebecca, that I email that to you so you can have that link for the show notes.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. I think it'll be beneficial for listeners. So thanks. As we
competition. Can I go into competition?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So everybody assumes wrong, just to let you know, that just because of my basketball background and my competitive nature, that they know how I define competition. And they're wrong, because it's not what you think. Competition is an internal drive. It's a desire to be your best. That's what competition really is. So and this goes back to when I tell you, hire for character, teach the skill. If I find somebody that has that kind of driven nature automatically, I want to learn, I want to do better, I want to take this class, this is how you're going to hear it. They're the ones that are going to think the bigger picture. They're the ones that will never say it's not my job, because they want to learn so many things that they want to do it all. That internal drive is what you call either discipline or competition, depending on how we're looking at it. So that's what I'm talking about when I say competition, because we all can compete with ourselves. It's not just competing with the practice down the street, even though I love to do that. You talk to my clients and they're like, oh yeah, I like to win, but I'll tell you what I liked. That sounds really pompous. I don't mean it to sound pompous. I love the preparation that it takes to win, because that's when you find out how good you really are, how good the team is. And that's what you can rally around as a team and go, you know what, we did do it. We did something we didn't think we could do, or we thought we might be able to do it, but we did do it. So that brings the team together too.
Totally agree. And I don't know about you, but I competed in my younger years, And it was that feeling of self-accomplishment, right? I did better than I did the last time. I exceeded a goal I had. And it's just that feeling of self-improvement. And then, of course, when you're working in a team, it is literally our team pulled together and we did better together. So, and I think that applies to your office and your team as well. So I love that.
How apropos right now with the Olympics going on that we're talking about that.
Yes. Isn't
on.
the reason that I was up all night. Okay. It wasn't. I love it. I'm waiting for ballroom dancing to become an Olympic sport. Okay, as we get here to wrap up this amazing, amazing episode, I feel like, Lynn, you've given us so many incredible gems and amazing decoding moments for all of our listeners. But as you know, at the end of our episodes, we love to ask our guests to share a decoding moment for them. Could be maybe brought you into dentistry because you've been out there in so many different industries. But would you share with our listeners a decoding moment for you?
For me, it has always been the clarity of being a coach and being able to see the potential with everybody. Being able to break that down into the big picture and from the macro and the micro level. So I absolutely love doing that because there's nothing that pleases a true coach more than to see somebody succeed that you've helped with, that you've had a portion to help them with, that impact, and being able to see, I told you could do it, but you didn't believe me. But now that we've worked together for X amount of time, you're doing that and more. You are exceeding beyond what you thought you were capable of doing. Now let's see how this relates to the team. Or if I'm working with a doctor or an office manager or an admin team member, it doesn't matter who I'm working with. But for them in the beginning to be like sort of like the shy, no, I don't know if I can do that. And don't say the word can't, because can't is we can do a whole podcast on the word can't. But I'm like, yeah, okay, that's a word you don't use around me, because players have found out real quick how far I'll push that to break them down, to build them back up so they know they can. I'll surmise it that way. But that's one of the things, being able to see that with individuals, that is what lights me up. I mean, you can tell I'm the chief encourager. I will encourage everybody out of all of these difficult positions, but I absolutely love being able to see that. That's what it's all about.
Thank you, Lynn.
I love that. Yeah.
You have done that for so many people, including myself. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for sharing that. Sincerely. I appreciate
Thank you so much for jumping on the show with us too. It's been such a great conversation. Like Rebecca said, our listeners are going to have so many different action items that they can take away and implement from this. So I greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Dental Decoders podcast. We hope you took away a valuable piece of information. As always, don't forget to rate, share, and subscribe to help us build our community of dental decoders. We look forward to seeing you for next week's episode.